Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this conference that is hosted by the Càtedra de Transformació del Model Econòmic. Today we have a very interesting visitor, Alessandro Cascavilla, and it's a pleasure to have him to explain part of his research work. Okay, Alessandro is now professor in public finance in the University of Rome, and he has done. He's an old friend from Universitat Jaume I. He has done the PhD here together with the University of Bari,
Yes,
in Cotutela, and he knows very well the Universitat Jaume I. And I think he has a very interesting research work related to the topics that we manage in the cátedra. So it's very interesting to have him here. And apart from the interesting research work that he's going to present, Alessandro is also he has a very prolific activity in the social networks, and he has a lot of followers, and he's also going to explain us how is that experience and how is that job of translating the academic world or the more technical aspects into this platform of communication, which is kind of very different. So the floor is yours, Alessandro, and we are
thank you so much.
Welcome very much, and thank you very much for being
here. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's better if I stay standing. Can you hear me if I? Yes, it's better because. Okay, thank you so much for this introduction. I am Alessandro Cascavilla, and as the professor already said, I'm actually assistant professor in public finance at the University of Rome, Unitelma Sapienza. And today I will present some activities related to my recent research, and also some insight from my personal experience as an economic disseminator on social media. The title of this presentation is Understanding the Perception of Sustainability and Digital Economy under a Perspective of Behavioral Economics. And this presentation will be divided into three parts. The first is related to a paper that includes an economic model of crime, in which we then test with an experimental setting the effectiveness of the theoretical conclusion of this paper. The second is related to the digitalization of the economy. So it's related to the perception of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is getting a very huge attention, especially among young investors. And so there are some people who think that Bitcoin will definitely transform the monetary system all over the world, and others that just think that it is a bubble, it's just a speculative asset. So this is a second paper that I will shortly present today according to the perception of young investors towards the Bitcoin. And then in the third part, I will shortly present what I did on social media and what I actually doing on several platforms, because I created a community of more than 200,000 followers in Italy that are most economic students. So it's a very targeted audience. And okay, let's start from the first paper. This is a joint work with Professor Abate Marco Dell'Anno and Andrea Morone, and it refers, as I already said, with a theoretical model related to the maximal fine theory. The maximal fine theory is a theory developed by Becker, who suggests that criminals are just utility maximizer individuals that decide whether or not to be criminal according to the expected utility. I mean, if you know that doing a criminal activity brings you a marginal benefit that is larger than the marginal cost, then you probably will be a criminal according to the sanction system, the probability of being sanctioned. And this is the maximal fine theory, and given that the fine is just a transfer from the criminal to the state, this theory suggests us that the state should just maximize the fine. And so an increasing fine would always lead to a reduction of the criminal activity, because criminals are supposed to pay more. However, recent literature showed that this theory is not always confirmed, because increasing fine could lead to an opportunistic behavior of the controller, because he has an incentive to get a bribe and to underreport what he discovered according to the choice of the criminal. So there could be such an interaction between the private citizen and the public official. In fact, excessive fine can lead to adverse, in some cases, adverse outcomes. So our research question is related to this theory. So we ask ourselves, does the maximum fine theory fail in case of corruption of the public official, so of the one who is supposed to control the criminal? So we propose a simple theoretical model that is based on the two most important models in this research area, in which maximum fine is not always verified. So it, according to Bowles and Garupa, an increasing fine has two opposite effects: a direct effect, that is decreasing the attitude of the criminal, and the second, that is an indirect effect that increases the benefit of getting a bribe. However, in their theoretical setting, they always find that the direct effect is always larger than indirect effect, so the maximum fine holds. And also in Kruger and others, the maximum fine theory still persists. We have two main contributions in this paper. The first is that we provide a sequential theoretical game in which the maximum fine holds in case of corruption of public official, and then we try to test this simple model with an experimental setting. However, the experimental setting refers to an individual decision-making survey that I will explain it later, where we just asked to participants that were supposed to play the role of the private citizen. So there is not a direct interaction in our experiment. So the theoretical framework works like that. So it's a sequential game with two risk-neutral subjects. The first is the private citizen that we assume to be an entrepreneur who can save money by waste in a not legal way. So at the first time he or she, of course, decides how much to waste. So the choice will be to decide the optimal level of X, that is the level of illegal waste. For each unit of illegal waste, he gets marginal benefit, that is B, and he covers a quadratic disutility cost that increases with X. So the private citizen also knows that after he decides the level of illegal pollution, he could be fined with marginal fine equal to F at the second stage with a probability P by a second individual, that is the public official, PO. But he also knows that PO can be corrupted, so he can find an agreement with the PO in order to get him a bribe, and the private citizen, could pay a lower fine. So the PO activity actually happens at time 2. So what happens at the first stage? Private citizen has to choose the optimal level of illegal waste according to a backward induction process, knowing the expected utility according to what the public official can do. At the second stage, the public official controls with a certain probability, so with a certain level in the market, the activity of the criminals. And he can decide to be corrupted or to be honest. If he is honest, he sets this raw star, that is the level of under-reporting, equals to 0. So in case of his propensity to be corrupted, he can get a bribe that is tied strictly to this level of raw. So the higher the raw, the higher will be the discount for the criminal, the higher will be the bribe for the public official. But he also covers a quadratic disutility cost that increases in the level of rho. So the more he has this bribe attitude, the more is the cost that he can pay. If at the third stage he is detected by a third actor that is played by the nature, so it's the internal affair division that also controls the controller with a certain probability. So in that case, if corruption is not detected, then the criminal pays a lower level of fine, and the public official gets a bribe. If the public official is caught, then he pays a proportional sanction, and the criminal pays the entire fine. Okay, so both of them are paying a fine. And so this is the scheme. So at the third time, when both of them made their decision, the internal affair division controls whether there has been some corruption activity. So the optimal choice for the public official is to select the optimal level of rho, that is the underreporting. So the expected utility of the private citizen is based on three possible words. The first is that the legal activity is not detected. So with the probability 1 minus p, public official does not detect the criminal activity. So the private citizen just gets, with the probability 1 minus p, the benefits for each level of illegal activity and just covers this quadratic cost that, of course, is lower than the benefit. Then, on the opposite, we have that both the criminal and the public official are caught, and with this probability, so p and p hat, the private citizen pays the entire fine, so f multiplied by the marginal benefit that it got before, and the quadratic cost of illegal bribing. In the second world, we have that the criminal is caught. So at the first stage, the public official discovers the legal activity, but the public official is not discovered by the internal affair division. So in this case, the citizen just pays 1 minus rho of the fine, so is lower than what he was supposed to pay, and then he covers this cost, that is the bribe that he is supposed to pay to the public official that underreported what he said. So all this is based on the fact that the entire fine is always larger than the level of lower fine, so the discounted fine with the underreporting and the bribe that the private citizen is supposed to pay to the public official. So maximizing this function according to the first order condition, we find that optimal effort in crime might not be strictly decreasing. So maximal fine theoretically is not always true because there is this quadratic effect. So there could be a kind of U-shape function that explains which is the optimal level of fine then, that do not create an incentive to be corrupted. So according to this model, we test two research hypotheses. The first is the dilution of crime deterrence. That is, for each level of the marginal fine, the average illegal waste should be greater in case of possible corruption rather than the case without corruption. The second is that increasing too much the fine could lead to a lower level of deterring effect of the fine itself, but also it can encourage the crime, in this case the illegal waste disposal. So we propose this online experiment that I already said is just an individual decision-making experiment in which more than 150 university students were recruited on social media, and they were supposed to fill a questionnaire playing the role of private citizen. They have just 2 periods of game with 2 treatments. The one without corruption, so there is no possibility of being corrupted with the public official, and the second, you know that the public official can be corrupted. So at the end of the experiment, we paid randomly some students, and we carried out it almost 2 years ago, so in June 2022. So the simplified framework was this. So the all the subjects were supposed to play the role of private citizen. So they completed a questionnaire according to the information we provide them about their payoff and the payoff of public official, of course. Each subject faced a hypothetical choice of dispose up to 100 tons of waste illegally. So where X can go from 0 to 100. We pose the marginal benefit equal to 100 equal, that is the experimental currency unit, and then we select a cost of 800 equals for each level of illegal waste, according to a threshold. If X is lower than 50 tons, then they just pay this one. If X is larger than 50 tons, they have to pay like a fixed cost that is very high. The participant also knew that there is a probability of 10% of being caught by the public official, and in case of in this case they were supposed to pay F, that is the fine, that varies according to several levels of marginal fine. That is our variable of interest in this case, that we propose 4 levels of marginal fine, that is 10%, 2, 4, and 6. So there are 2 treatments. The first is without corruption. So subjects just had to indicate from a number to 0 to 100 how much they are supposed to waste in a not legal way, just according to this level of marginal fines. Then in the second treatment, there is the possibility of corruption. So we explain them how the payoff works in case of corruption, and we asked again, indicate how many tons you will dispose illegally, knowing that the controller can be corrupted. So there is the possibility of corruption, and we provide them all the information related to the choice of the public official. In the end of the experiment, we proposed several control questions in order to control for their personal attitudes towards the honesty, the respect of law, but also the climate change responsibility, the trust in other people, and some socio-demographic information. These are variables that are, the question related to this variable are taken from the European Social Survey, that is one of the most widely used survey in economic and social sciences, in behavioral economics and social sciences. So the econometric specification is this one. So our variable of interest is to explain the individual level of illegal waste disposal that ranges from 0 to 100. In order to explain this, we have as a first main regressor the level of marginal fine. Then we also include a squared level of fine in order to see whether there is this potential U-shaped relationship between the fine and the level of illegal waste. But we also control for the treatment with and without corruption. So there is a dummy corrupted, refers to the case in which subject played the game of corruption, and then the beta 4 and 5 refers to the potential interaction between the corruption and the level of increasing fine. And then in the end, X prime is a vector controlling for all the socio-demographic information and the personal attitude, so the control variables that I already explained. So we, according to the nature of our dependent variable, we estimated this relationship with the OLS estimator, with the ordered logistic estimator, and the generalized order logistic estimator. And these are the main results. So these are the estimates for the OLS method. As you can see from the first line, on the vertical line there are several specifications that include or not all the variables, or just the most relevant ones. We carried out a reset test in order to see which is the best specification according to all the data we have, and we should see just on the column 3 and 5. And as you can see, there is a confirmation of our theoretical prediction. So the increase in fine is negatively related to the level of illegal waste. So there is this deterrence effect, of course, of the fine. However, the second, the squared level of fine has a positive impact, and it is significant. And so this means that there could be a quadratic effect of increasing such fine. And also, as you can see, the level of the treatment with corruption always shows significantly higher level of illegal waste with respect to the treatment without corruption. And this also confirms our first hypothesis of the dilution of crime. The results are quite similar for all the generalized ordered logit estimator, and so beta 1 is negative and significant, beta 2 is positive and significant, and the treatment with corruption is positive and significant too. Here we plot the level of the marginal effect of illegal waste in case of corruption respect to the case without corruption. So how can we read this table? We can say that, for instance, with a fine rate equal to 6, the probability that an individual disposes all the waste properly, so illegal waste equals to 0, is 22.5% lower than the treatment without corruption. So it's just a cross comparison. And in general, with a fine rate equal to 0, 1, so in the first horizontal line, the completely illegal dumping, so x equal to 100, is 30.4% more likely when corruption is feasible with respect to the other treatment. So, according to this data, we can say that the dilution of crime deterrence is confirmed, because, as you can see here, there is the plot of the predicted illegal waste according to the case without corruption, the blue line, and with corruption, the treatment with the red line. And so both two hypotheses are in general confirmed in this case. So the probability of crime encouraging or at least non-discouraging reaction to fine is somehow confirmed in this case, because beta 1 is negative, but the slope of the effect of increasing fine increases. So there is this possibility of U-shaped relationship between the level of fine and the level of illegal waste disposal. So according to this evidence, we can say that the possibility of corruption, of course, generates an incentive to illegal waste disposal, and that higher fine rates in general decrease the level of illegal activity at a decreasing level, and potentially there could be a sort of crime encouraging effect of this increasing in deterrence factors. So there are two effects of increasing fine. The first order, so the direct effect that decreases the level of criminality, and the second that appears in presence of potential corruption of the public official. The problem, of course, of this study is the potential external validity, the limited potential external validity of the study, because, of course, we provide a theoretical framework that, in order to be validated, should be validated with criminals. It's hard to find criminals that tells you how much they will be willing to be criminal. However, we acknowledge that this is a potential limitation, but as all the experimental economic studies that are based on a subject pool of students, this is hypothetical framework. We also do not control directly for the interaction between the private citizen and the public official that can, of course, generate other interesting results, but this can be, of course, an extension of this model. And as policy implication, we have seen that since there can be an interaction between the level of crime and the level of corruption, the optimal fine system should balance these anti-crime and anti-corruption policies. And the public spending on anti-crime policies may be more or less effective than public spending for anti-corruption policies. So there is this potential difference between anti-crime and anti-corruption in crime. And this latter aspect cannot be ignored if we want to obtain a optimal crime-deterring sanction system. So this was the first paper. I don't know if you want to make like questions now or at the end altogether.
Maybe at the end.
Okay.
So thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. I just wanted to check on some things which were not clear to me. Maybe I missed some part of it. One was the motivation for the subjects. I understood that they were like 158 subjects, something like that. And you said that you were paying only some of them. I don't remember if you said how many of them were getting
10% of them.
10% of them were getting the payment.
Yeah.
And then regarding the modeling, the theoretical model decision, I was a bit I was wondering why you didn't make the probability of detection depend on the size of the crime. If it was just a matter of keeping things more focused on the effect of the penalty, or was it just to simplify the model? If you had also calculated this other kind of model, like a bit more externally valid, with where the probability of being caught depends on the size of the crime that you committed. In terms of pollution, I think it's a rational or a reasonable assumption that the more you pollute, the easiest it is for the official to find that pollution, to detect that pollution.
Yes, this latter point is very interesting. However, yes, we set the probability of being caught as an exogenous variable because our variable of interest was just the level of we were just attempting to extend the Becker model, and in the Becker model the probability is just exogenous. So of course it's could be an interesting extension, but it requires of course another another work to extend it. But it's a good point, of course. So thank you. Okay, in this second paper, I just wanted to try to find an answer to a question that is related to the perception of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is one of the most debated assets, especially across young individuals. If you go on social media, you can find easily videos of some crypto bros that try to say you that Bitcoin will change the monetary system, is the future, and it will get like 1 million of market price value in like 1 year. So give me your money, I will invest your money in crypto. So I wanted to ask myself why some people are so convinced that Bitcoin will change the monetary system, and why other people are so against Bitcoin and just see it as a bubble, as an investment tool. So this question led me to write this paper that has been recently published on the Journal of Economic Psychology. And so this is the price of Bitcoin of yesterday at this time. And it's getting a very important attention among young investors in particular. And its importance is not, is not negligible. We have to account for the fact that cryptocurrencies are gaining traction as an alternative investment tool. However, according to the literature, Bitcoin fails to be defined as a proper currency. Bitcoin, born in 2008 from an idea of Satoshi Nakamoto, that was a pseudonym, is not a proper person that we know, at least. And the transaction data suggests us that it does not fit yet, at least, the definition of money. And in fact, several empirical works show that for some period, Bitcoin is acting as an hedge against inflation. In some small markets and informal economy, it is used for also to make payments and transactions, but this is mostly related for like very informal transaction. And so the question is, if this is what Bitcoin is actually used for, what people perceive and how people evaluate and use Bitcoin. There is a recent interesting natural experiment in El Salvador. In El Salvador, from September of 2021, they adopted Bitcoin as a legal tender, so as a currency. With the Bitcoin law, there is a mandatory law that Bitcoin has to be accepted for payments, and the government gave a lot of incentives to citizens in order to download the blockchain app in order to make their payments, such as the discount of $30 for some expenses. However, despite all these efforts from the government and all these incentives, the data from a quasi-natural experiment in El Salvador showed that the adoption of such cryptocurrency is really limited. In fact, just 1 out of 5 business use Bitcoin for their payments, and just 5% of sales are made through this Chivo app, that is the blockchain app through which you can pay the goods and services. And most 90% of firms suddenly convert Bitcoin to dollars. So the question is, why people use Bitcoin and for what reason? In general, behavioral and psychological aspects lead people, or at least drive somehow the intention to use Bitcoin. Several papers show that the use of social media is positively related to the intention to use Bitcoin, but also the personal attitudes and the perceived trust in the blockchain are drivers of this adoption. And so in general, a very recent work, a literature review, according to a meta-analysis, show that the most important factors are the personal attitudes, the performance expectations of the technology, and the social influence. So the peer effect is very important. So if I see my friends investing in crypto, probably I will invest in crypto too, and vice versa. And but also there is a problem of the perception of the risk, and this is extremely lower among those that are aware of the fintech sector. However, the literature lacks research discussing precisely which are the behavioral aspects that lead people to see Bitcoin as a money or as a speculative asset. And so I formulated these 2 main research hypotheses. The first is related to the fact that Bitcoin, according to most of the literature, follows the stylized fact of an asset. And however, these stylized facts are not well known by everybody, but probably are known by just people who knows a little bit more about economics and has probably higher level of financial literacy. And so the first hypothesis is that Bitcoin is seen as an asset just among people who have a higher level of financial literacy. So higher financial literacy should be positively related to the perception of Bitcoin as an asset. The second hypothesis is instead related to the fact that in Bitcoin actually people invest just to get a positive return, most of them at least. So this is the typical behavior of herding. However, some of them are really convinced with the initial aim of Nakamoto, that in his white paper declared that his invention of Bitcoin is supposed to modify at least, or to replace the actual monetary system based on fiat money. So people who are who has a higher knowledge of how Bitcoin works who study very hard, probably who read the white paper on Nakamoto, probably are really convinced that Bitcoin will change the monetary system. And so the second hypothesis tests exactly this point. So higher knowledge about Bitcoin should be positively related to the perception of Bitcoin as money instead of as an asset. So in order to carry on this research, I structured a survey composed by seven sections. The first is the Bitcoin literacy. I just used as a reference Banner paper on the Journal of Behavioral Economics and Finance, in which they create a Bitcoin literacy index. So there are 6 questions that I ask to people to see how much do they know about the Bitcoin itself. Then the perception and the use of Bitcoin. I explicitly ask people, do you think Bitcoin will replace money? Yes, from 1 to 5. And then, do you see Bitcoin as an asset? Yes or not? Then the third section is related to financial literacy. So also in this case, I take as a reference several papers published in which the level of financial literacy is related to the knowledge about the inflation, the interest rate, and the diversification in the market. Then I also account for the potential behavioral biases that affect the individual decisions, such as overconfidence, self-enhancement, self-protection, and mental accounting bias. Then I also control for the personal attitudes, also taking reference for from what the literature says about the question about the financial stress, the level of trust in others, the trust in banking systems, the political orientation, the concern about climate change, and the informatic concern. Then I also account for the big 5 traits of the personality, so the OCN, that are the openness, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism that are often used in psychological studies. And then I just count for the social demographic information of each individual. I collected data from 682 young individuals who also invest in Bitcoin. So in the second section, I also ask people: do you use Bitcoin for payments, or do you use Bitcoin for investment, and so on. So this is the questions related to the Bitcoin literacy index. So there are just 6 questions related to very basic questions related to the Bitcoin, and I was quite surprised because most of people made a lot of mistakes in this literacy index. So the dependent variable of our interest is the perception of Bitcoin. I use 2 complementary variables. The first is the measure of Bitcoin perceived as a money. So how much you are agree on the fact that Bitcoin can replace the current system, monetary system. The second is a dummy that takes the value 1 if people say that Bitcoin is just an alternative asset, a speculative asset. And I try to explain the variation in this dependent variable according to 2 main regressors. The first is the level of financial literacy. So how many correct answers do they provide respect to the level of inflation, interest, and diversification. And then the Bitcoin literacy index. So to see if you know about Bitcoin, how much you know about Bitcoin can influence your perception of it. And then I also control for several control variables that I short explain here. So I also control for the level of perceived financial literacy, because in the literature it is well known that the perception of what you think you know about finance may lead to have a lot of bias in your investment decision, and the probability of getting a higher monetary illusion bias increases significantly with a higher perceived financial literacy respect to the actual level that you have. Then I also ask individuals of their use of Bitcoin as a payment and or as an investment, and I control for the behavioral biases, for all these personal attitudes that they already explained. I also include the role of tax morality, because Bitcoin is often used to make informal payments. Informal payments are related to tax evasion in most cases. And so I also included this level of willingness to comply or not with the taxation system, the personality traits, and the social demographic information. The empirical strategy is very simple. In order to estimate the variability of these two dependent variables, in the first case I have an ordinal measure, and so I use an ordered probit estimator. In the second case, since the variable is a dummy, I just use a probit estimator. And so, according to the control variables included or not in the estimation, I estimate a baseline model, which I just insert the level of financial literacy, Bitcoin literacy, and then the attitude of individuals if they use or not Bitcoin for investment and payment, and the perceived financial literacy. So this is the baseline model. Then I also add the role of biases and attitudes as a regressors. And then in the full model, I also use the personality traits and the social demographic information as a potential regressor that explain this perception. And these are the main results. As you can see, this is the ordered probit estimates where the dependent variable is Bitcoin substitute as the money. As you can see from the first row, people who has a high level of financial literacy don't think that Bitcoin can substitute money, but they see it as an alternative, just investment level asset. So this is related to the first hypothesis and seems to be confirmed. As regards the Bitcoin literacy index, it is opposite effect. So people who know more about Bitcoin tend to think that Bitcoin will replace money. So are convinced about this potential change in the monetary system. Then another interesting point is that people who invest in Bitcoin tend to see Bitcoin also as money, not just as an investment, because people who pay in Bitcoin probably just think that they use directly the Bitcoin, so they know that it is money, more or less. But also people who invest in Bitcoin think that Bitcoin is just more than a simple asset, because it can replace money. Then for sake of simplicity, I just included here all the control variables, and I will tell you in a next slide what is the effect of some of them. And then let's see the estimate from the other point of view. So who says that Bitcoin is an asset? So here the dependent variable is a dummy equals to 1 if people directly says that Bitcoin is an asset. Also in this case, the first hypothesis seems to be confirmed, because people with higher level of financial literacy evaluates correctly Bitcoin as an asset. But people with higher level of Bitcoin literacy index don't think that Bitcoin is just an asset, think that Bitcoin is more than an asset and will replace money. And this is also interesting to see from the effect of the third regressor. So who invest in Bitcoin think that Bitcoin is not just an asset, think that Bitcoin will also replace money. So probably for some reason they invest in Bitcoin and they keep Bitcoin for a long time just to see whether it in the future will replace money. And also in this case, the people who pay in Bitmoney see Bitcoin as a payment system rather than an asset in a significant way. So the role of perceived financial literacy is not very significant, so it's negligible. And other control variables explain this perception. For instance, the behavioral biases do not explain the variability of our dependent variable, but among attitudes, people who trust more the banking system tend to see Bitcoin as an asset. Rather, people who do not trust banking system, in particular the European Central Bank, tend to see Bitcoin as a substitute of the monetary system. Then, of course, considering that Bitcoin is often used for illegal and informal payments, people with higher tax morality tend to see Bitcoin as a speculative asset rather than a means of payment. And also the fact that people interact with others tend to affect the perception of Bitcoin, because people involved in voluntary association tend to value Bitcoin as an asset rather than a money. And the personal traits are not statistically significant in explaining this perception. And Bitcoin seems to be evaluated as a money more among females, not employment and in education, neither training individuals, so people who do not work and do not study, and self-employed workers. Also probably because self-employed workers are strictly related to the possibility of cheating on taxes on their declaration, because they are not directly taxed, but they have to declare how much do they get. So this evidence provides new insights from a behavioral perspective respect to the perception of Bitcoin. However, also in this case we have several limitations. The first, it's related to the sample. That is both a limitation and an opportunity, because here results refer just to Italian young individuals. And in Italy, we know that we have one of the lowest level of financial literacy across all the developed countries. And so this can affect, of course, all the overall results, because these results cannot be verified in a country with a higher level of financial literacy. And also the time frame is very interesting, because I carried out this research almost 1 year ago, more than 1 year ago, on February 2023. And in that period, there were two main phenomena on the crypto landscape. That was the collapse of Terra Luna Crypto and the collapse on FTX platform. And this probably affected also the perception in perspective of what Bitcoin will be. Because what I see, and then I will jump to the third part that is related to the activity on social media, is that when Bitcoin, of course, goes up, all people think, Bitcoin will replace is the future. Where when Bitcoin or other crypto go down, then people lose trust in Bitcoin and tend to sell what they had. So this also has to be accounted in the interpretation of the results. But in general, it is important to see that Bitcoin, according to the literature, is not identified as a proper money. And the role of financial literacy tends to be prominent in the perception of Bitcoin, and because individuals with higher level of financial literacy tend to see it correctly as a speculative asset rather than money. But also the people who study very hard Bitcoin, who go deeper, think that Bitcoin is more than a simple asset. Even he or she invested in Bitcoin, they think that Bitcoin is not an asset, but is more than an asset. And yes, the level of trust in financial institutions is also leading to a different perception of Bitcoin among young investors. So this was the evidence of the second paper. If you have any question related to this.
The percentage of participants in the survey who had experience with Bitcoin.
Yes, I didn't include it, but it was like 45%.
45%, like about half.
Yes.
So very, very interesting. Very nice results. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comment?
Is there any relation between the asset, the way the people perceive Bitcoin as an asset and the Ponzi game? I mean, when I'm in the Ponzi game, I realize that Bitcoin is only speculative. Did you check if people changed their mind when maybe they believe it was only money, and because of the Ponzi situation they perceive it is a speculative asset.
No, I didn't do it, but of course I can check it if some interesting results can arise, and probably I think this can affect, of course, this perception. And yes, in general, in this case, what I did first, it was just to see separately the level of financial literacy on this perception, and then the role of Bitcoin literacy. Then I put them together just because the results didn't change much, so the effect and the significance was the same, and because I also submitted it as a brief report, so it has to be short. But of course I can go deeper and find some other interesting switching point in this perception. So yeah.
I have a question. Well, one concern that brings to my mind is the potential reverse causality between perception and knowledge about the Bitcoin or finance. Have you tried to instrument, for example, one potential instrument could be education level. I think that you have available this information in the survey. Education is related with the literacy, and maybe could be more exogenous to perception, because the concern is that, well, people with a good perception on Bitcoin could be more encouraged to learn about Bitcoin. No, at the same time you are exploring the reverse causality, so it could make sense to try to check if the results are robust using education as an instrument, maybe. But well, just
yes. No, this is of course a good point. I was checking at the very early stage with this methodology that we know about the Lubel second and third moments instrument. So, but I didn't check for the level of education. But I can do it with the first strategy of this second and third moments of the main regressor. There was exactly the same result. So I don't know if it will be maintained or not in case of this new instrument, but I can try. And I used this relationship, so the knowledge of Bitcoin on the perception of Bitcoin, because I'm not wrong, in the paper who discusses the Bitcoin literacy index tend to include the level of knowledge in itself. So it was like a bit, of course, there could be like a problem of reverse causality, but yes, I will try to check it also if there is this other result. Thank you.
yes.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, for your presentation. Very interesting. I also wonder, in the way you have done the research, which is basically you concentrate on individual net effects of the different variables. I wonder if it would be interesting to explore a configurational analysis. Okay, so try to see what are the combinations of those variables. I wonder what happens when you have financial literacy and also know the technology, for example. Okay, if these combinations, maybe with QCA, you can explore different combinations of variables that lead to a perception. Okay, so I think it would be interesting also to in the way you have shown. I mean, the net effects are quite clear, but maybe that other perspective could be also. It is, I don't know what you think. If
Yeah, and it's worth to do it also probably with some cluster analysis just to see whether there are some clusters that are affected. What I actually wanted to do at the beginning was to see whether the effect also of joining some community of crypto or just some finance community could like predict this perception. So the role of social media, social capital. I mean, if you just join if you have like participation in some blogs that are just talking about crypto, you probably will be just informed about it, and this would of course increase your perception of this Bitcoin. But yes, it's a good extension. Also, I will try to do it. So thank you.
any other question?
Okay, so finally, related to this problem of particularly lower financial literacy in Italy, I started talking about economics on social media. So in the third part, I will just present some strategy of what I did and what I'm doing on social media. I created my personal blog that is All'Economista, in which, of course, I talk about economics. And I started my activity in 2016, when I was at second year of bachelor in Ancona. And I created the Economia del Suicidio, that is the largest Italian community of economic students in Italy. And then 3 years later, when I was here in finishing my master in economics, I started talking about my personal opinions on economics. So at the end of my university career, I started talking with my face on Instagram. The idea was to share like the economic knowledge in an innovative way, because people don't talk about economics in Italy, and this is also because we have a lower level of financial literacy. But we don't talk about economics because we have a low level of financial literacy. The fact that we don't talk about economics leads us to a lower level of financial literacy. And so I wanted to like break this this relationship with a clear strategy. I wanted to say why I know about economics and other people do not know about economics. So I wanted to bring out of the university classroom what I studied in the classroom, and in perspective, just to become a reference point in the economic landscape among university students in Italy. And in 8 years, I think I arrived where I wanted to, because I created the largest community, as I said, of economic students in Italy that is most composed by under 35 people, are more women than males, and it counts under 30,000 followers on Instagram, and also 50,000 on Facebook. And I also have a community on Facebook that is called Club of Economists. And in this page, I just share funny contents about economics for economic students. So my idea was, I want to talk to my peers in that period that were the economic students. So I said, which is the most effective way to reach people and to engage people? And it was generating creative and hilarious content about the university life of economic students. And so in a couple of years, I reached 100,000 followers on Instagram. Then 3 years later, I started talking about economics on my personal account, and I reached 60,000 followers. Also in this case are under 35 people, even though here the age is a bit higher. So here are not just economic students. Here are just economic students. And so in general, I refer to a community of 200,000 people organic reached. So I've never invested in partnership with Facebook or ads on Instagram, and this leads to a level of 4 million impressions per month. So more or less 2 million of views per month. So what happened when I was studying at university in Ancona? It was 2017, and I was generating content for 1 year at least. So this is the level of, okay, I lost the scale here, but it's like 1,000 to 10,000. What happens is that after 1 year of creating contents, just targeted to economic students, they started to share themselves among them. And so I saw this interesting pattern that I like to share, that is the difference between the total and the viral reach on social media. That is, the blue line is the level of all the views on Facebook on 2016. The orange line is the views that my post had on Facebook by sharing the post itself on Facebook. I mean, if you go on a post and share it on Facebook, it goes on the orange line. If you tell a friend there is this post on Facebook, then you have this blue line. Okay, so this difference can be explained by 2 factors. Or you pay the platform, and it leads to a higher level of reach because you pay and not because people shared, or because students start talking each other and sending the pics that I posted in WhatsApp, so in other social network that lead people to follow us on Facebook first and then on Instagram. So here I understood that what I was doing for 1 year had a potential, because if people start talking about what you're doing without that you say people talk about what I'm doing, then probably there is this, you found out a need for someone. So what I actually did and do on social, I create 3 kinds essentially of contents. The first is entertainment. So I try to increase the level of reach and engagement. I create just interactive posts for economic students. So I say, okay, I make you have fun with some economic contents. Then I create information in order to let people know what happens and to let people know that I will provide you the information. So you are aware that my job is what I'm doing. And the third one, that is the most difficult part, is to educate people. So to tell people to spread more than the news, more than the information that also newspaper do, but to go further and to tell people, okay, this is what happens, and I can say you what does it mean. And so the first point was to create the community first. And the community, I tried to create it with essentially memes, so with hilarious content for economic students. Once I created the community, I tried to engage them as much as possible, and then in the end, I tried to actually disseminate all the information, both on social media, but also I also created a blog and a newsletter, and I also participated to a lot of events to talk about what's going on in the economy, what's going on in the labor market, and which are the perspectives for young students in Italy. So the first 3 years of activity, I just created funny contents that only economic students could understand. So this was, of course, a thing that I did spontaneously, because when I was studying, for instance, macroeconomics, and some people told me, do you want to go out or not tonight? I shared with them, like, instead of answering yes or not, I shared with them the prisoner dilemma, explaining them why it is rational to go out altogether or to not, and so on. So It was something that I did also in the real life, and then on social it exploded. And the use of this kind of message is extremely accepted among students, and is extremely effective to reach your target. So I wanted to talk in economics to young economic students. Then I started talking to things that are more complicated. For instance, the pension system is one of the most engaging content for my generation. In fact, this is a post that I did. This means young people who do not have 1,000 euros per month, political system that make the interest of retired people, and retired people that vote for this politician, and then the Italian national pension system that is killing all of them if he wants. And this kind of post reach like more than 300,000 people. And here you can find also other numbers of relatively more serious content that generate also higher level of interaction. Also related to the level of sustainability of the welfare system. This is of course, it was a video where I talk about the some perspective of our financial system in terms of pensions that is not very very sustainable for young generations, and it reached more than 200,000 people. I also shared like very nerd content. On the day of St. Valentine, I like prepared kind of funny paper in which I explained the love theory, explaining the love theory with a Edgeworth box theory. So I said, okay, if you want, if love is a scarce resource, you can choose between staying alone or staying together with others. You can choose, and so this one was one of the most appreciated content on my profile. This means that people who know about this thing are just economic students, and this post was appreciated by more than 8,000 followers, and reached more than almost 150,000 subjects. So this means that I talk directly to economic students, and in fact these are data related to the reach of contents that are just related to economic students. This is just for the students, and it reached almost 2 million of views. Then coming back to more serious and the third part of my job on social media, that is the dissemination activity. I created a weekly newsletter that is called It Depends, and that is the right answer to economic questions. And each Friday morning I send this email with the 2 most important or most relevant news of the week in the Italian landscape, economic and political landscape, with my opinion, of course, with a lot of charts and interesting reading to interpret data and to go deeper. And it actually counts more than 7,000 subscribers, and these are, for instance, the last publication. So you can also find it on the web. I have a website where you can find a lot of information, of course, about myself, about the newsletter, but also about the blog. That is a place where I publish the opinions of economic students. So economic students write short articles about economics, politics, and what they want, and I publish them in this blog that is called Patto Generazionale, this generational pact. This activity, of course, led me to also collaborate with a lot of brands, with institutions, with banks and companies who want to reach effectively an audience of young people interested potentially in economics and finance. And so I also now work as a social ambassador for the Italian National Institute of Statistics. I work with some actors in the fintech, especially sector, to increase the financial literacy also among my followers, and so on. So, among other activities, I participate very often to several seminars or events or festivals about economics, in which I try to talk to my generation about what are the possible, what is the future of our generation in terms of work, in terms of economics. And I recently also spoke in a TEDx conference in Vasto, and for instance, next month I will be talking at the International Festival of Economics in Torino. It is one of the most important festival in Italy. And so this is more or less what I did from 2017 to now, that allows me to talk directly and to understand what people need in terms of information and knowledge. And this gives me also the opportunity to carry out my research according to what they are doing and what they know. For instance, the paper of Bitcoin that I already presented was born just with a survey. It was just a simple survey on Instagram stories, where I saw interesting results, because most of people saw Bitcoin as a money, and I started asking myself, so why people is doing this and not the other. And every time I post, of course, a content, there is always an interaction in the comments, in the stories. So I see the perception and I see what people want to say. And so this leads me to also calibrate my intervention in such both on social but also in events. So this was all for today. So thank you very much for the attention, and if you have any question, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Any final question?
Thank you for your presentation. It's just a question about if you spend a lot of time in this strategy in social network, you, according to your opinion, is academia is capturing the real problems in economics and in economy in general, or maybe it's two different worlds?
What led me to talk about economics on social media was also this point, because doing research, of course, is a super and very interesting activity, but often what I see is that the research remains among peers. In the seminars and in the conference, there are just professors that know very much about the topic, but in this research there is a lot of information that don't go outside in an effective way. So my objective is to do it. So to try to go ahead and say, okay, this is a very interesting new insight from the research, and so people should know about it. But it is hard because people don't know very low about what researchers are doing. So I perceive that people just want to, do not read newspapers because they do not understand, because newspapers actually do not explain exactly the context, so it's not very effective for young. But they actually are losing what the academia is doing. So I think the academics should try to also to make something to transfer this information outside the academic context. And thanks to social media, it could be easily done, but it requires time and strategy and a lot of effort. So, but yes, this is a crucial point, and it's actually what brings me to still do it and not just focus on research. So I try to do both.
I have a question just about that. How do you do it? Because what I see here is a lot of work. Okay, so yes, you said you can access easy. Yeah, well, what you've shown here is a clear strategy, and apparently the amount of hours that you have to dedicate to that is immense. Probably, I cannot imagine myself doing both things. No, so doing the academic work and all that other side that obviously with the amount of feedback that you receive, the comments and so on, and the newsletter, the blog, so and also the other events that you cover. How do you do it? how can you cope with this amount of work in both worlds?
Well, actually, the most difficult part is to create the community. So I had this this privilege that I created a huge community before starting the PhD. So after the PhD, I already had a very large community, and now the work is just generating contents in a relatively sustainable way. So I actually reduced, of course, the number of publication in terms of posts on Instagram and Facebook. So because it is essential when you have to grow. So if you want to increase your reach, you have to publish every day. But now that I almost reached, I say, half of the economic students in Italy, because there are 200,000 enrolled, so half of them are in my pages. I don't want to grow more because the target is more or less that one. So yes, now the problem is just to get a sustainable work on social. And now I have a couple of people that help me in writing the newsletter and writing the post. So I just put my face and I say, okay, this is the script, I read the script, and this is a reel that I can post. So I have more or less a structured workflow, because otherwise it would be crazy. Yes, there were some periods in which it has been crazy, but now it's I think it's I can do it. It's doable. But yes, if I have to think to start again, all the work is it's impossible. So or you do it just for like with a startup and people pay you and you do it as a job, but otherwise it's very hard. So yeah.
Any other question?
So thank you, Alex. I arrived late, so perhaps it's already a question that was in your presentation. No? But how do you use the data that you collect? So the huge amount of data that you collect from the post of the student, do you use for research? Can you sell it? So what is the final goal of all the information, behavioral information that you collect in your homepage?
No, I don't sell them. I cannot sell them. And no, I just use them as an insight to see I mean, which is the trend of what to post. I mean, before posting, I ask people what you want to hear. I mean, what is your most important topic that I want to cover, and I do it. But regarding my rent from this activity, I used the channels also to spread surveys in order to get, for instance, I had a survey on the distance learning system during COVID, and there I had like 3,000 answers from all the economic students, and then I used this data to write a paper, so it helps me to get published this paper also. And but actually I don't have a strategy to collect and to get data. I have just aggregated data, and I could do something, for instance, with the subscribers of the newsletter, and but I just use the channel as a communication, just to communicate my activities. And the next, if I have to launch, I don't know, in the next months I will be doing a series of webinar with a broker that is Scalable Capital, in which I will just explain the basis of finance like in 3 lectures. And so in order to spread this information, I will use my channels, but it's just for internal use, and I do not give other people the insight that I have.
Thank you.
There was also
Any other question?
I have a question about why did you launch this community for the economic students, especially for the new generation? I mean, what's your motivation at the very beginning?
My motivation initially was just to do not feel alone among economic students, because I was talking to my flatmates about what happens in the parliament on the economy, and nobody understands anything. So I wanted to have like a response from my peers about this, and to activate my peers to think about what happens in our economic landscape, because in that period we had 2 problems, or one problem and one opportunity. One opportunity is that I started learning a bit more of the average in Italy about economics. So I wanted to share with them at the end of my master what I learned about the pension system, the public debt, things that we talk about in television. And the second is that in 2019 we had the most populist government in Italy, and they were doing a lot of not so sustainable economic laws, economic things. So I wanted to make people understand what they were doing, and so this was the real motivation. So to reach somehow to say, okay, this is wrong. What he's doing, I don't know, this government is not fine. So we should talk about it. And since nobody was talking about me in my house, or when I was having dinner with others, I found out a way to spread this knowledge. But the first was just to have fun. So the first community was just to have fun with economic students, because among my friends, when we were studying economics, we were like nerds talking about economics also outside of the classes, while others were just studying for the exam, and that's it. And so this gave me the opportunity to say, okay, I don't think that we are just 3 of us that talk about, that see this the economic under this point of view, because all the economic students have several topics that they know, and so I wanted to say, okay, if I know it, also other 100,000 people will know it, and this led me to open this blog.
Thank you.
Any other question? Okay, so thank you very much, Alessandro, for your presentation, and thank you very much for coming. So we conclude here the session. It will be afterwards available on video if someone wants to review part of the content. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.